Hey cousins, this is Lethabo.
And this is Mokgadi.
And you're listening to
What My Cousin Said.
So cousins, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you haven't liked, followed, subscribed to any of our platforms, please do it right now. So subscribe, like, leave a comment on anything or any of our previous videos. And yeah, cuz, how are you? How's it?
I'm good. I'm good. You know, today we're having not as much of a chat, still somewhat of a chat, you know, but not as much of a chat. So I'm good. I won't go into too much detail, but I've been good personal-wise, work-wise. Yeah, good. You?
I'm good too. And I think it's a great time to talk about, you know, being young, corporate and black. And I think that is definitely the topic for today, given that your girl is graduating. So I think
can you edit in,
you know, confetti,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. So
by the time they see this, will be a graduate.
Yes. So you know, speak to me accordingly.
Yeah.
Address me as a graduate. You know, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, the reason why we want to tap into this is because we want to, you know, speak to the different things that we've gone through in our careers and just share light on, you know, the different experiences that you, as you know, a young individual, you know, trying to navigate your 20s, go through. And I think, you know, it would be, you know, a great start to our series, because we actually haven't even spoken to, you know, much on career. So what would you say is your background career-wise? So how was high school? What subjects did you choose? And what made you choose the career path that you're currently, you know, on?
Okay, cool. So mine's pretty straightforward. So high school I had, what's the normal ones? The languages, so English, Afrikaans, LO obviously, and then Kirle, math. I did pure math, and then accounting.
I survived. Like
barely accounting, and then history, which is like a bit of a mess, you know. So basically, at some point, I got grade 10, I got physics, the life science. By the end, I didn't. That was it. Yeah. So I think by then I kind of knew that I wanted to go the commerce route, and luckily, my school made sure that we were very aware of university requirements and stuff. They brought a few people to talk to us. So I knew that what mattered at that point was APS. And then what I needed for what I wanted to study was math. So I made sure I kept my math and that I could pass it, and that all of the other subjects would be subjects that I know I can get a good APS in, right? So then that was me in high school, and then I applied to University of Pretoria, also known as TAX, and then I did a BCom in marketing management. So that was my undergrad, and then I did my honors in also marketing management.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was my background school-wise. And then career-wise, when I started working, so I thought I was going to go into like brand, because I think when you think of marketing, the traditional thing is either brand management or agency.
Or social media.
Yeah, that group. So I knew I wasn't going to go into agency because at that time, I don't know if it's different, agencies didn't pay well. So they would pay well higher, but not necessarily entry level, right? And as somebody who, I'm black, I needed to have, like at that time, I knew that by the time I start working, I would need to be able to probably cover a place, whatever. So I needed something that was going to be able to at least cover that, right? So that's why I couldn't go the agency route at the time. So then the other industry that we were told about was FMCG. So I'm going to tell you what it stands for. I'm going to try to remember. Fast moving consumer goods, right? So that's what FMCG stands for. So that's your Unilevers, your SAB, your P&Gs, your Coca-Colas, so those kinds of companies. So that is what we were told about, you know, as an option, FMCGs, and then also you knew the ones that would be, they call blue chip companies. I'm going to find out exactly what that is, but I know it would be like the top 100 companies that are on the JSE, whatever. So it was also recommended that I try get into a multinational or whatever, right? So then I went and I started in trade marketing. It wasn't brand. So I was a grad in trade marketing. So basically trade marketing is the bridge between sales and marketing. So the bridge between the whole brand strategy and what you as a consumer see in store, right? So I was a grad in that department, but I've always known that I was somewhat analytical, and I think I even saw with like the projects that we would do in school that I would somewhat try find myself in an analytical role, right? So after that, there was then an opportunity in the company I was at for a sales analyst, right? So this was in the business intelligence division, and I was told, hey, apply, let's see, right? So I applied and then I got into that. So I started there as a trainee before I became permanent a few months later. But basically, sales analysis is what it is. Literally, I was just analyzing sales, giving business recommendations, P&Ls, whatever. So that's the role that I really think helped with ensuring I have business, analytical, and commercial acumen, right? Which I think, definitely I knew that it would set me up whatever path I choose to continue in my career. So I did that for a while. And then at that time, I was still thinking I might want to go into marketing or whatever. But that role is very, I'm sure you can hear from what I say, like very Excel systems, whatever. So I think I was trying to say I needed something that's a bit more creative or more people facing,
Absolutely.
and I was like really young and I felt like I really needed that in my career at the time. So then I applied to a company. So I left the company that I started with, and there I started in sales or whatever. So it's kind of still the same thing that I'm in, but it's key account management. So key account management is, like I said, I'm within FMCG. So there's brand, which is all of the efforts you guys see. So all of the billboards, whatever. So there's all of that. And then sales is basically responsible for the products that you see in store, right? So the products that you see in store in the specific store near you. Also, what else? So I said distributing, the price of those in stores, promoting them. So whenever you see broadsheets and you see a special and stuff, there's CAMs that are negotiating those. And then also trade terms. So trade terms are the percentages and fees that you're agreeing on as a business to deal with that retailer, right? So that's basically what I've been doing. So I was at that company and then working on the one retailer, and then I left where I am right now, still within the same space. So
you sound so passionate about what you do because, not that you're supposed to show a certain type of personality when you speak to your job, but I feel like you sound like a person that knows what they're doing, which is important when you're working in such big companies, because I feel like sometimes there's some kind of promotion of laziness, and I personally feel like it's important to know what you're doing and how to do it.
Yeah, you're right. I think I was about to downplay it right now when you're saying that I'm passionate. I am. I think I was, like I said, we had quite a bit of information when we were like choosing subjects and what we want to study. So although I had no idea of what I'm doing right now even exists, I had no idea, but I will say I knew that I wanted to find myself in somewhat marketing, somewhat analytical, and I just happened to find myself in that space. So definitely I am passionate about business development, those things. Like I find it really interesting, and I think that's why in the long run I see how I could be in management consulting or things like that. So I do find it interesting. And it's been maybe 6 years now, I don't know. So I've stayed within one industry, just moving across. So that's pretty much what it's looked like for me as a background. We'll go into what inspired that, all of that, but let's start with your background.
So we have a similar, graduate. We have a similar background. So basically in high school, I decided to take pure math, accounting, business studies, and history. And am I missing something? So initially they had put me in a life sciences class. They had initially put me in a life sciences class. Literally, I was upset the whole week because it was a mistake because I had chosen business studies, but I could not understand a single thing. I am not for sciences. No, we are not doing that. So I had to make sure that they removed me out of that class in the first week, and I excelled at business studies. I think I excelled in grade 10 in accounting, and then it literally went down after. So, and then math was also just like, I think I've spoken to this as well in our previous episodes, that math got difficult as we got to grade 10 and 11, and it was so different. I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. So I think in matric, unfortunately, I had to drop to math lit. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get into a university as I had hoped because of my, math lit mark. I think I had gotten like 69. So I was literally just about to make sure that I am able to, enroll into a university, but didn't meet the APS score, unfortunately. So, that was like one of the most heartbreaking moments for my life. And then I had to take a gap year, unfortunately, and figure out what direction am I taking? Am I really still passionate? Because initially I wanted to do law.
I remember, yeah.
I really wanted to do law because I feel like I'm one of those people that are well informed on, information in terms of laws, and just I love arguing. I love, just arguing on fact, and those are the types of things that I prefer. But I also feel like it doesn't only take that to become a lawyer. It requires, a lot of reading and will to do so. So I think I wasn't aligned with that anymore after I took that gap year and then decided to do marketing at TUT. And when I got into TUT, I realized that I'm actually doing a diploma. And I was like, okay, what does that mean for me? I'm doing a diploma. Do I want to do BTech? And like, that was literally my aim. I said to myself, listen, we are going the whole way. After the diploma, we're going to the BTech, and just to make sure that I'm getting a graduate program.
So wait,
this was my plan.
Sorry, just a question. So the difference then, what TUT does is that they make sure that you can get a qualification before something is degree level.
Yes.
Okay, so that would be a diploma, and
yes.
then, BTech is degree equivalent.
And, I was doing so well at school, I even shocked myself. And this is what we've also spoken to, that, you do so well in varsity that, it makes such a big difference to how you were doing well in high school. So I felt like, okay, girl, you got it. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then I realized, and I think I speak to, the previous episodes where I went into, serious depression because of my contraceptives. And I wasn't able to manage everything as I used to, because I think that's when I started it. And, school was not working out for me at a point. And that was not great. I wasn't able to explain that to my parents. And I don't know, I mean, people go through different things where it becomes harder. And I think I started feeling like I'm in a slump and I'm not going to get out of it.
Yeah.
But I enrolled with UNISA. I started afresh. And this is what I always encourage, you should not be afraid to start again. And
it took a lot for you to do that, eh? Shout out.
It took a lot. It took a lot of trial and error, understanding what you want to do. And, as a person, I'm very passionate about being creative since I was a child. And I realized that marketing definitely is in my path, because my brother's also a brand strategist by profession.
I didn't know that.
Owns his own company. So I feel like it's just like a thing in my family. Well, in my is it paternal side of the family, they are more like marketing related type of people. And I think that's a language that I understand. And I said, you know what, let's do BCom marketing management. And I had the privilege of having Mokgadi to always like give me some insight on what it entails and what that looks like. And if this is something, a path that I would like to take. And I thought to myself, yes, absolutely. Let's do this. And went into BCom marketing management at the University of South Africa. And I can't say it was the easiest, but I did well.
You did.
Do you understand? So I did well for myself to say, okay, I actually do know what I'm doing. And yeah, I've been working in small companies for the past, I think, 6 years. I can't say that I've had the similar experience of knowing or being able to say that this is what I'm good at because of how small the companies are. I'm not a person that is easily... I struggle with understanding that this is how well you can do something. So I'm not able to relay that to you right now and say, this is what I'm good at. This is what, because I don't feel like it translates in terms of the jobs that I've had. I don't know if I'm making sense. Like, it's very,
yeah.
I feel like I'm good at certain things, yes, but I don't think I've received the accolades to top that and say that I am good at 1, 2, 3.
I get you. I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, right? But I think what that is because of And well done that you were doing this while you were studying, right?
Yes.
So you were studying and then you were working. So I think because of that, you would have obviously had different types of work.
Absolutely.
Right? But I personally think, like, especially the ones that were similar, that I feel like I know what your strengths are from some of the stuff that you've told me. Like, it's called community management. Like when you do social media, community management, digital marketing, all of those stuff, which is actually so evident of how qualifications or how industries evolve, right? Because if you look at when I graduated, digital was starting to come up, right? So digital marketing was on the rise. We knew when we're doing campaigns or whatever, all these projects, that we need to somewhat include something e-commerce or somewhat digital, and we'll see where it goes. Where by the time you graduated, like, digital is such a huge part of what a marketer requires, you know? So I think it's just because of you were doing that while you were studying that obviously then it was probably more of a job to ready you for a career, but not necessarily that you got to start in what your career was.
And I feel like a lot of people do go through this, you know, particular thing where you work in small companies or smaller agencies that don't necessarily achieve their own goals themselves, but now you feel like you are part of the failure, or you are the reason why the business is not successing based on digitally, because you feel like, you know, the responsibility is on you to make sure that they thrive, you know, in a business sense. So I feel like, you know, those are the things that have, you know, that are key to why I do somewhat feel like, you know, I'm in the middle. I don't know how I feel, but I do absolutely know my strengths. I know that I would be great in creative strategy. I think I'm one of those people that you put in a room where you want ideas to be put on the table. I'm the person that can run a brand. You know, I'm the person that knows their story in terms of those things. But I do feel like there's always room for, you know, polishing. And I feel like that is the type of space that I want to get into. I want a job currently that is going to enable me to polish my strengths. And I think that's the direction that I'm taking. And I feel like, you know, as I'm doing my honors, yes, I'm actually enrolled in my honors. I feel like I will be able to tap into things that I've never been, you know, had access to before because of my degree. So I think that's how I feel. You know, so we are very different in that sense. I feel like you're more data analysis, or like what you were saying.
I think mine is more analytical. I think that's the best way that I can put it. Like, mine is a lot more analytical. You see how you just gave an example that you're the kind of person that you would put into a room, come up with ideas. I knew this very early on in varsity. I remember we used to do a lot of group work, right? And there were the people that I knew, if I was with these people, they're going to come up with these amazing ideas, right? That wouldn't be me. But you give me that idea and I can bring it to life.
Exactly.
You know, so that would be where mine is, where I will then say, okay, if we're doing something for the business or for the investor, this is what will matter to them. This is what will matter to the stakeholders. This is what it would mean in a business sense. This is the numbers to it, the whatever, the how, the, you know, so And I think that's something that's so interesting, that I think marketing is one of those stuff where, as marketing is a hit or miss,
Yes,
it's a hit or miss. And I remember the confusion. I remember my aunt said, you know, and like I said before, I didn't have the marks. I hope she knows that. But either way, I think it's one of those, if you know, you know. You know, and I think also I'm such a believer of the BCom.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm such a believer. I advocate for them only because of the unemployment rate in this country. I feel like BCom are so flexible. For me, that's what it is. Well, at least in my experience and what I've seen, that you can go into so many different industries, do so many different roles, and I think marketing is one of those. And what's nice about it is that depending on your the experience that you've had, the institution that you've gone to, you can go in so many different ways. Because I do know people that I studied with that went the agents route, they at the Ogilvy, some people went communications or whatever, you know, some people did go that route. So I think what's nice is how so many careers generally give you the ability to tailor it to what you want, to where you want to take it. That brings me to this, right? I think you've touched on it a bit, but what do you feel like actually really inspired you to go on the path that you wanted? Like during that gap year, what was going through your mind that made you say?
So during that gap year, I think it's important that I share what I was doing. So I was a waitress at a club, club city, not club, but I guess.
Industrial.
Yeah.
It's gone, so we can say it, right? It is gone.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But it was
top floor.
Top floor.
Top
floor,
floor,
no longer exists. And I was working there for like 6 months. And throughout every day, everyone would ask me, what are you doing here? Like, you don't sound like a person that's meant to be here. And I want to encourage people to understand that you don't have to be in a place where you want to be just because other people feel like you don't belong there. You don't have to be there forever. You're just like passing time to figure out where you want to go. And at that time, I literally worked tables like from odd hours, literally crazy hours. I was always unhappy. But then I realized that I'm great at writing. So that's the first thing. I'm great at writing, great at coming up with ideas, great at graphics as well. So I was like, which direction are we taking? Is this branding? What are we doing? And I started realizing that I have such a great or deep passion to be in a room running ideas, coming up with, your strategy for social media. And I was like, I love social media. I don't just love it for myself, but I love to run it for another company. And I realized, and I was like, okay, what does this mean? Well, how does that look like? And I was like, okay, let's go into become marketing management, because I feel like it allows me, even if I want to start over again, I can go into a different industry whilst with this particular degree. So I thought to myself, okay, this would be great. And like as a podcaster currently, it works out so perfectly. So I feel like
she runs like the social,
so I feel
every now and then it's me, but
we do it together.
No.
But for me, I feel like it's a gradual progress. And I feel like because, we're in a very technologically advanced place as a generation, as a world, I feel like, there's so much more growth.
Yeah.
But I'm open to that because I've got the education behind it that backs it up. So I'm constantly inspired by the growth of digital media. And I feel like that is my calling, just to exist in that space, whether that means I'm doing graphics, whether that means I'm doing analytics, whether that means I'm doing the creative strategy. I feel like that's just who I am. So, being a creative individual, I don't think it's an easy thing to exist. And as a freelancer or as an educated person that's looking for a job, because I feel like you're still also trying to figure out where you fit in. Because you don't have like the FMCG experience or you don't have agency experience, you don't know where your journey lies. So I feel like that's where I'm at, but I do know what I'm passionate about. And that's literally what drives me every day. Being able to know that one day, maybe 10 years or 5 years, even tomorrow, honey, I will be able to fit into a company and say, okay, this is what I bring to the table. And based on my experience and education.
Yeah. I think with that, and I've said this to you throughout your journey, that, and perhaps I was saying this at the time just to try and be like, oh, be grateful, be thankful or whatever. But I think you've been lucky to actually have jobs.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
You've been lucky to have that while you were working, and you've been lucky for those to be things that can contribute towards whatever that that you were trying to move towards. Yeah. So I think if it comes to what inspired me,
I was about to ask.
I'll ask myself.
Let me ask.
Sorry, you're not asking me. Okay.
So, now that you've said to us, guys, so we have to be serious now. So now that you've done, you've been, you got through high school, you went through varsity, you went through different experiences. What would you say inspired you to get to where you are today?
Okay. So for me, first I'll start with the field that I wanted to go into. Again, one of the stuff, I'm not sure if I've already mentioned it, but what I really wanted to do was psychology.
I did not know that.
You didn't know that? Okay. So what I really wanted to do was psychology. I think from a young age, the empathy's there, but I've always been really interested in human behavior and stuff like that. And as an introverted person, the thing is, you spend so much time reading up on information and like watching shows. I used to watch Oprah so diligently, and I would understand the problems and why the therapist they.
But I feel like it was a family thing. No, it was
why Dr. Feely and why never dissect matata and a couldn't feel that could be me, you know. So I really enjoyed that, and I used to feel like, wow, human behavior is so interesting to me. Then I remember I was now starting to research about it, right? As we choose subjects. So what, grade 9, I was starting to research about it. And then also still into grade 10, I was starting to look. And I was basically starting to understand that psychology is hard to translate into money. Mm-hmm. You can tell from here, I was very clear on understanding that I'm going to need money.
Yes.
So I was a bit worried about that, because to anybody that doesn't know what the psychology path looks like, is this the undergrad, then there's the honors, which is already competitive to get into, but the really, really tough one is it's really hard to get into the masters. And the masters is crazy competitive. There's people who are top students who cummed their degrees but take 3-4 years to even be accepted into a master's program, right? So I found that out around that time, and I was like, okay, that's not where I'm going. And then I found out that a lot of people who do psychology actually end up in marketing. So I was like, okay, maybe that means I can just go straight to marketing. And that's what led me to want to do marketing.
But it's actually interesting because, sorry to interrupt you, because it ties in together if you think about it.
100%.
Human behavior.
Yeah, because if you think about
how you consume things.
If you think about it, marketing is just psychology translated into business.
Absolutely.
But at the core of it is human behavior, literally. So it's just that, right? And this might be something that anybody who's not in marketing doesn't know, but whatever advert that you're seeing, listen, when I tell you it was planned, in the background, it was planned. From how things are arranged when you walk into a store, on the aisle, what is at the top, what is at the bottom, it's planned. It's not just you. You know, so that's why I found that interesting. And I was like, okay, cool, let me try marketing. And of course, at the time, my concern was also, marketing is one of those stuff that you can really end up in the field without having studied it. And I was aware of that. So I knew, hey, when I'm going in to study this, I'm going to have to find my niche. Because, I don't think it's those, it's not gate kept. You know, it's not that. I don't know what the body exam, there isn't that.
So that's what,
the unnecessary things,
you know,
stress.
So that's why.
That's what led me to want to go into the actual field. But what inspired me to go into where I am right now, which is sales and camming, is, I swear, young black women who were in that industry when I was starting out in corporate. It was that. And I'm so glad that the older black women that I came across when I was starting out as a grad or like really junior positions were willing to sit down and take me through what it took and give me that career advice to say what they think could be next. And what then happened is, I started telling them that, there's this thing, I'm really not sure where I'm going to go with my career. Like I said, I was a sales analyst at the time, and they basically sat me down, like a few of them, and they're like, we think this, we think that. And there was one who specifically said, I saw this post, need you to apply. I will do whatever it takes to help prepare you for that interview. And that, I promise you, is part of why I am here. Because then it felt like, okay, here's somebody who I feel like I've told them what it is, what my interests are, and this person is saying this role could work for me. And I was like, what is there to lose? Let me try it out. And they were not wrong, And I think that is why I'm so thankful. And I think I really want to do more when it comes to that. But that is why I'm actually so passionate about pouring into people that are starting out in the workplace, because I know what that did for me. Just for somebody to listen to me, hear what I wanted to do, help me basically say, this is what your career can look like, these are your options, and that is why I do what I do right now, simply because of that. Where, like I said, when I graduated, I had no idea this career even existed.
I really wish I had someone like that. I think, sometimes as much as we don't say it, we do need people that help us or direct us to our journeys or lead us to what we would like to do. Because I don't feel like sometimes as you work in companies or whatever, you need to learn more about yourself, but other people's experience of you is also key.
Yeah.
So I think, you were privileged enough to experience that. And I'm also grateful for you as well, because I feel like if you weren't able to do that, you wouldn't even be able to tell me sometimes, oh, you know what, Lethabo, look at this and this, and this is what you've achieved. Take this path, 1, 2, 3. And I think, that's very helpful. So she's not just like that for her, her colleagues, but I think she's like that in general with a lot of the people that you surround yourself with.
And I think besides the empathy, thank you for that, but besides the empathy, I think it is that other people did it for me.
Yeah.
And that is why I'm so passionate about it, that if you can do that. And while I acknowledge, right, that when you don't work in a huge or traditionally whatever industry or multinationals, I think it's not as easy to find that support, right? Because multinationals are so corporate. Like the systems are there for you to thrive.
Yeah.
They make sure there's mentorship programs, there's whatever. They try and do that. And yes, I didn't meet these people in that context because that company wasn't really like that. But just being in a space where you feel like, oh, there's this person who's like 5-6 years my senior, their life looks together, what do they do? And I think I know it's harder. I understand what you're saying, that it's harder when you don't work in that kind of industry. But I think that's also the beauty of social media, right?
Yeah.
I know LinkedIn can get a bit much. We're just joking about it right now, that sometimes the essays, something are just like a bit funny. But there are people. And I think sometimes it's about reaching out. Somebody that I always talk about is Matewe. I'm always talking about Matewe.
Yeah.
She's the founder of Beauty on Tap. She's one of those people where I know she's mentioned that right now she's not in a position where she's open to mentor people because she mentors her staff.
Yeah.
But she's one of those people where if you see somebody like that, even if the mentorship isn't in being able to pick up the phone and talk to them, but in following their career and their principles. I know she's a CA by profession, so even if you're not a CA, but I think there are certain principles that you can look for and take certain things from people that you feel like that's who I want to be when I grow up. So I think it's also when you're not in the space where it's easy to reach out to those kind of people, you then need to be intentional to say, how do I look for that mentorship? So, and this is like a pipe dream of mine. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I really want to start some form of like a mentorship thing, especially with like high schools, just because I've seen how much it's just a lack of information.
Absolutely.
And there's just so many kids that are just sitting there with potential, but they just don't know what exists.
But also, I think it goes beyond that. It goes beyond like life experiences.
Yeah.
People don't experience enough to know that there is more out there and there's more career choices.
Exposure,
Yeah, so I think that is something that you definitely need to make sure that you do, even for our hood, because I feel like Atteridgeville needs to grow in that sense where people understand that you need to be inspired. It's not just about wanting to go to school. It's about inspiration. It's about making sure that you achieve that goal for yourself and, maybe be the next whatever that you want to be.
And I think it's good that you mentioned Atteridgeville because I haven't been there in a while, not even like visiting, but I'm just saying I moved out there when I was like, 19? So I think I have lost a bit of touch. So probably whenever I've thought of it as going is like a township or whatever that's near me and not necessarily there. But you're right, because it actually needs to go back there. I remember speaking to my husband and I was saying that he's from Limpopo. And I've said to him that what I find really interesting as somebody who's from Gauteng, who's from Pretoria, who's from Atteridgeville, that everybody there is just like educated. It's almost like it's just the expectation, like it's the norm. Obviously, after high school, you do this, and it's like crazy to me. And only because of when I look around, it's not like that. Like anybody who's from, I don't know if it's the same in Joburg, but anybody who's from Pretoria will tell you it's such, like it's so rare for that to happen. I remember telling my one friend, I wonder how people feel when I talk about them, but I don't say their names. I remember telling my one friend who they're 3 girls, and all of them have graduated most, if not all, like will maybe be on the second qualification or whatever. But I will remember saying to her, I was like, you don't know how big that is for your parents to have been able to get 3 out of 3.
Exactly.
Like in Pretoria.
Exactly.
Like in Pretoria, that is rare, you know? So I think you're right. It is about going back to those places. Because sometimes it's an exposure thing, right? If I walk out and everybody who has stuff, so that's what gangsters, criminals, whatever. So that's what people do. Giddy tender, nothing wrong with tender if you do them legit, you know. But nobody is going through the school, academia, get a job or whatever. I understand why that's not attractive. I understand it, right? But why I'll always be a firm believer where it's possible, right? It's because of it's something that somebody can't take away from you.
Yeah.
Like 5-10 years down the line, I feel like it's one of those stuff for me, sometimes it feels like the bare minimum to equip yourself. Whether it's that, whether it's an FET qualification, whether it's whatever, I don't necessarily feel like that's stressed enough, especially in townships like Bupeli.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that you touched on that, especially because I think people think, like, from what I've seen, go high, like go Peli and you know, any other township, is that people think just because you came out with an H or whatever, you can't do better than that, or you can't try and do something to make sure that you are aligned with your purpose. And I feel like that's also another thing that, you know, young teenagers are not encouraged to do. Follow your purpose. What do you think you're good at? Even if it means that it may not be educational, what are you actually good at? What do you think?
And there's something.
There's always something with all of us. So I feel like there's a bit of a gap there. And I think it would be great, you know, to encourage more people. But I feel like also people just need to be open to listening and getting information, because I feel like a lot of people are know-it-alls, and I think the key to what has allowed a lot of people to grow in their careers is to be teachable, and you know, to know that, okay, this is not how you do it, this is how you do it, and this is how you get to, you know, the pinnacle of whatever you want to do. So I think, just being teachable and being open to, you know, understanding what your general purpose is really assists you to
and at any stage, you know, and at any stage. And I think, I look forward to starting that one day. I hope
I'm holding you accountable.
Yeah, thank you. Now that I've said it out loud, you know. But that's something that, and I hope everybody knows that it takes a community, because if kids want to know about CA things, about law things, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and they will be
so you
someone
guys
else.
will have to come in when it comes to stuff like that. Yeah, so that's pretty much what inspired me. Just a question that I have, right? Like, whether schooling or career has been the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome thus far?
I think a lot of people do touch on this, as you've seen, like on Twitter threads and all these social media stuff, where people ask for funding, or people ask for people to help, you know, top up their fees so that they're able to graduate and those things. And I feel like getting through school was the toughest one for me. You know, I think just because you're smart or you're able to do the schoolwork doesn't mean you're able to get out of it financially, or, you know, and I think that was the biggest challenge that I had to overcome. I was fortunate enough to be awarded with bursaries and stuff like that. And I feel like that's not an easy thing for anybody to get. You know, I think it requires you to apply yourself and to look out and make sure that you're applying and making sure that you're doing well in school, which comes with a lot of pressure. So I feel like just maintaining that was also a challenge for me. Hence, I had to change schools, because basically in TUT, I lost my bursary and I was devastated. You know, so I think those are the things that, you know, you happen to go through, and I feel like that was one of my biggest challenges for you. What would you say in your career and school wise? What was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome?
I think before I move on to me, I think you're so right about the funding one, because something that I've also realized is, I feel like when I was in school, it wasn't that difficult to run as fast. The people that I feel like struggled were like the missing middle, right? Where you make too much to get NSFAS, but too little to actually afford fees. I felt like those are the people that struggled most. But with NSFAS also lately being problematic, it's tough.
Yeah.
Like finances are about to become that huge barrier for schooling, you know, where I didn't always think it was the case. It kind of was, or if you perform, you'll get it. You know? Yeah. So just what my challenge has been, I think, was more with regards to my career. This is something that I took really long to work on, but I had to find my space in the career while staying true to who I am. So, like I've said, I'm an introvert, right? And as you can imagine from the kind of job that I do, there's quite a lot of it's very external facing. There's a lot of cross collaboration involved. So it's not natural for me to want to engage with so many people on a daily. In fact, it's overwhelming. And so many times I used to find myself sitting wondering if this is even for me. Should I go back and try to do something, stay within business intelligence? Should I find something else? Because I would just find myself being so drained after like a meeting or whatever. All of this personal interaction, interpersonal, it was just a lot for me. And it used to weigh so heavy on me. And something that also then, why it started bothering me more is that I would find myself in organizations where it felt like all of the people who would be fast-tracked or moving forward were people that were extroverts. I couldn't help but notice that if we're in a meeting and it's like an organization-wide meeting, those would be the people who would have a chuckle with the director or with the GM or whoever. And they would be the ones who could speak really strongly about some of their achievements and stuff like that, where for me, even if the achievements were there, I would find it difficult without it sounding like I'm hooting my own horn. And that was my challenge, to say, okay, I don't now want to be Thabang, who is this extrovert, goes around the office high-fiving everyone. That's not who I am, you know? So how it was about staying authentic to myself. And I think how I feel like I've managed to overcome was understanding that I don't have to be that person, but at the same time, realistically, so I need to find ways to get out of my comfort zone. So how do I find some of those spaces? How do I make them easier for me to navigate? So for example, instead of only knowing the one or two people that I generally interact with, I would just sit there and try to create conversation with people in isolation, even if it wasn't on a large platform, to try maybe build those kind of relationships, ask how they are, whatever. Because then I found that, okay, now if we're in a room and there's 20 of us and at least I've got somewhat of a close relationship with 5 or 6 of the people, it would be easier for me to speak out loud. So that was like a really tough one for me, that somewhat felt like an existential crisis at some point, actually. So I think, for me, that was the biggest challenge that I had. I don't know, did I not know that I was an introvert or what? I don't know what my plan was. But it constantly feels like I'm going against the grain of who I am. But I remember my therapist once saying that I need to find ways on how to exist within uncomfortable situations.
Absolutely.
So I feel like that's where I am. And the reality is, if I think of my strengths and where I want my career to go, it's always going to need some level of cross collaboration and might always be externally facing. So I'm not now going to stunt my growth because of I struggle with that.
And I think it's good that you've opened yourself up in that way, because I think, in order for you to excel is to be uncomfortable and do something that is not your normal
100%
every day to day.
That's why even the podcast is one of those stuff.
Yes,
for me,
absolutely.
and I think it was one of those stuff that were a step at me forcing myself to be out there. It was definitely one of those things where I'm forcing myself to say, how do I sit and have to talk for like a certain period of time and understand that although after this I might need a nap or whatever, but
you're overstimulated.
But it's still good for me
Yeah.
to do that. So I think for me that has been my biggest challenge. Now we've spoken about our challenges, né?
Yeah.
Something that I haven't really touched on, and I feel like I feel it sometimes. Tell me how much of the challenges, whether the one that you mentioned or in general, do you feel like were unique to you as a Black woman, or were a unique experience for a Black woman?
There's constant, and I'm glad that you asked that, because I feel like sometimes there's a constant competition that I don't know exists. Right? So like when you walk in corporate and you're speaking, or maybe just, presenting or sharing the information that you've worked on, 1, 2, 3, I feel like there's just a certain level of competition that I don't know exists, or like someone has an eye on me or looks at me in a certain way that I don't look at them. So if I find someone inspirational, for example, and I feel like I can learn a lot from them, they don't see me the same way. They see me as competition, or they see me as this person that can do more than them or be better than them, and I don't understand where that comes from. And that as a result of that, you're either mistreated in the workplace, or you're getting a less pay because of that person, or, just numerous amounts of things that I've gone through that I don't understand, that don't correlate with who I am in the space and the work I do.
You feel like being a Black woman leads you to gain, like you're being targeted.
Yes.
Okay.
You're almost at the forefront of, criticism all the time, or, being told that you're
There's high
combative.
expectations for you.
Yeah,
You're the angry Black woman. If
That's my problem. Literally, I think the biggest thing that I've had is, I'm such a passionate person that when I speak, I can come across as, oh, she's angry, but I speak with so much passion that I really take offense to people saying I'm combative.
And can I tell you something? Sorry to interrupt you. When it's a white girl and she's standing there and she's being passionate, she's passionate.
Absolutely.
The moment you're Black, you're angry.
You're combative.
Angry, you're combative, you're being hostile, you're being rude. Yeah.
You're too honest. You need to, approach this differently.
Yeah.
So for me, that's why I think it has been the biggest challenge that's been unique to me is character development. Almost like you're always trying to learn about yourself when you're working in the workspace, because it's like, okay, you can't say this, you need to say it like this. But someone else that's, of a different race can say it openly, and there's no problem. I think it's such a unique thing, but I think a lot of Black women in corporate experience this, because my mind is the best thing that I can offer, and I'm educated enough to offer the things that I'm offering. So of course I'm going to speak with a lot of information and understanding that, okay, this is what I've understood from 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So how do you find that envious? How is that competitive? Like, I don't understand. I'm doing my job.
But it's like everything you do has a negative connotation.
How?
And with that, I relate to that. I feel like I need to put disclaimers. Not with any specific organization, not where I am, 1, 2, 3, all of that. Take it all down. But I relate to that throughout my career. That it's so interesting when I'll hear somebody tell me, they feel like I'm so tactful. I'm not rude. I'm not. And what they don't know is that I've had to practice that. And it's what you're saying, that it's like, as a Black woman, you need to work on not presenting that way.
Yeah.
And it's not nice, because sometimes somebody will come at me sideways. And I want to come at them sideways.
Yeah.
But I know that it's going to come across differently if it's me.
Absolutely. And that's my thing. If it's me.
Yeah, if it's me.
It's not because of someone else. And what I've realized is whether or not you've got other people in different races, if you're completely working in a Black environment, some people have a problem with you and how you come across, so it's easier for them to say that you're combative, you're angry, you're all those things, because that's what stereotypically defines a Black woman.
Yeah, and I think sometimes they don't feel like you're the palatable Black person.
Absolutely.
And there's just always going to be those stuff that you struggle with, because I do sometimes find myself, sometimes I need to be assertive, often I need to be assertive, but other times it's like you can tell it's now going into combative territory because you're literally refusing to hear me out. you're refusing to hear me out, and you're leading me to have to get to where I'm like, man, this is what I'm saying.
Or you're constantly told to be kinder, but you can see that people are not being kind to you.
Yeah, like,
now
okay.
returning the energy is a problem,
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, but she said this.
Yeah. No,
I think, and a lot of people who are in the workspace or who are Black women will definitely relate to that.
So and I'm glad that we're speaking to this, because that also sets the tone for the type of person you are at work.
yes.
And I think it brings me to the question where I would want to ask, what career advice would you share with your younger self? So whether that be a 13-year-old, 18-year-old, what would you say to her? What should she know?
I think what I would say is that first, with like, we were just talking about where you mentioned that your challenge is like with being constantly being painted as, I think what I would tell to an 18-year-old, my advice might be very specific to a Black child.
Yeah.
But as something that I struggled with, I think it's own your space.
Absolutely.
Like, own your space. I can't remember what it was and why it stuck with so many of us when Zosie said it. Was it that? Take up space, And I think that's the biggest thing, that I feel like, especially as a Black person, even if you go to the most elite of schools, right? Something that you might always have to that you might find yourself struggling with is just taking up space, where you'll find that there's this person who's so much younger, maybe straight out of varsity, they're in the workplace, but they feel so comfortable having certain conversations with the GM or CEO. It's like, they were at a braai with them or whatever, and you can just tell they're so comfortable with. Traditionally in the Black culture, because of you don't really address elders as much, you don't really you respect superiors, and that it might put you in a position where you stand back, even if you're doing the best work. If you don't stand there and make it very clear that it's your work, that it is the best work, the work that you have put in, you're going to find yourself overlooked.
Absolutely.
That's just what's going to happen, and I think that's what I had found to be some of the challenges that I'd experienced that are unique to Black people. But a second piece of advice that I would give is that life is so long. It's so long, and at that moment, especially if maybe you feel like what you wanted to study is something that you don't look like you're qualifying for right now or whatever, don't underestimate the amount of times that you're still able to pivot.
Yeah.
I promise you, so many people are able to pivot. And if you find yourself in an undesirable situation or circumstance at that time, at some point in your life, if you take your passion seriously enough, if you believe enough in your vision, you'll find a way to pivot.
Yeah.
I think that is like the two biggest pieces of advice that I would give to even 18-year-old me. Yeah.
I think you've touched on what I wanted to say as well.
Okay.
But I think, the key thing that I would have wanted to know at that age is you can start again.
Yeah.
And I think, I feel like there's not enough open-mindedness when you're a teenager. You're told that this is how your life should work out. This is what you need to do, and 1, 2, 3. But when you get to that age and you feel like, okay, it's not working out, what do I do?
Now?
You feel stuck. Like, you feel like, I can't start afresh. I can't redo this. I can't go back to school. You can.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's
literally can.
And because it's my direct experience, I thought my life will work out as smoothly as the adults made it out to be. It's not going to work out that way. So, being able to start afresh and, rewrite your own story.
Yeah.
So be okay with rewriting your own story at whatever time.
Yeah.
And pivot
That's
after.
beautiful.
So I think that's just how I feel about the what I would tell my younger self.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that is it from us, guys, when it comes from our young corporate Black insert. I hope that you found some nuggets of information or some knowledge or whatever, or that you were just able to take something from it, some level of inspiration from that. But what we would really like to know from you is what fields of interest would you like us to cover? Like, do you want us here to have, I'm thinking of the traditional people, do you want us to have a CA here, lawyer here, doctor here? What does that look like? And what would you like to hear from them? Like, is it this kind of a conversation, or is there something in particular that you would like to
more
hear?
like their stories, or to find out how they did it, you know? I think also just being open-mindedness, bringing open-mindedness to your career path, like bringing freelancers, like other people that are in different spaces to encourage you and show you that it's possible.
Yeah, so just let us know. Exactly, like let us know. Even if it sounds like, yo, this is me, this is what my marks look like right now, I have no idea what I want to do. Maybe you want us to bring somebody who was also at a point where they had no idea what they wanted to do and what that looked like for them. So just please do let us know. Please engage. It really helps. Also with just the kind of content that, knowing what you would like to see. So
continue to subscribe, like, follow, and email us with the feedback. And also rate us, guys. You know, continue to rate us on different platforms.
Yeah, on YouTube, they need to give us a thumbs up.
Yes.
And then on
Spotify and Apple Music.
On Spotify and Apple Music, please rate us. Please leave your comments. That really helps us grow as well.
As we said, data is very important. So, you know, re batla
Dinomoro. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you so much for watching, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.